You are welcome to Federal Government College Port Harcourt e-learning in Christian Religious Studies. Our topic for today is on greed and its effects by Mrs. Ikedeason. We have the following outline to guide us in this lesson. First, the performance objectives, followed by introduction, then the story of Ahab and Naboth, effects and consequences of greed on Ahab, the healing of Naaman the Syrian and Gehazi's action or conduct. This will be followed by the lessons to be derived from Naaman's healing and Gehazi's action. The summary of the lesson, then evaluation and assignment. Let's look at the performance objectives. By the end of this lesson, the students should be able to 1. Explain the concept of greed using the story of Ahab and Gehazi in the Bible. 2. Outline 5 effects of greed on Ahab. 3. Present at least 3 lessons that can be learned from Gehazi's conduct. Introduction. We're going to look at the meaning of greed. Greed is a strong desire to have more possessions, such as money or other things. Other things here include power, food, or materials for human use. It can also be defined as the process of not being contented with one's possession. This means lack of satisfaction of what one possesses. 2 stories in the Bible portray acts of greed. These include 1. The story of Ahab and Naboth. This can be found in 1 Kings chapter 21, 1 to 16. We have the second story, the healing of Naaman the Syrian, and the role played by Gehazi. This can also be found in 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 20 to 27. Now, let's look at the story of Ahab and Naboth. In this story, we shall see a greedy king and a poor citizen. Naboth, who was a Jezreelite, had a vineyard in Jezreel near King Ahab's palace. King Ahab requested from Naboth this vineyard for a vegetable garden. He, however, promised to exchange it for a better vineyard or pay him the value for money. Naboth claimed that the vineyard was his family inheritance and turned down Ahab's request. King Ahab, who felt sad, returned home and refused to eat. Jezebel, his wife, saw his sad mood and asked to know why he has refused to eat. King Ahab replied by reporting his ordeal with Naboth. At this point, Jezebel wondered if Ahab was still the king of Israel and urged him to eat, assuring him of possessing the vineyard. You are welcome to Federal Government College Port Harcourt e-learning in Christian Religious Studies. Our topic for today is on greed and its effects by Mrs. Ikedeason. Effects and consequences of greed on Ahab. Ahab became an enemy of God. Reason: he killed an innocent man because of his strong desire to have more possession. Secondly, evil was made to befall Ahab's family, as all males shall be cut off. What do we mean by this? He who kills by the sword will die by the sword. Not only that Ahab will die by the sword, but all the males he has in his family shall also die by the sword. Thirdly, Prophet Elijah predicted that dogs will lick Ahab's blood by Naboth's vineyard. You can see that he killed Naboth to possess the vineyard. In the same vineyard, he died, and not only that he died a shameful death, and dogs came and licked up the blood of a whole king. Fourthly, Jezebel's body would also be eaten up by dogs. That is the result of wickedness. A wicked wife has paid also with her own life, and dogs came and ate up her dead body. Fifthly, Ahab became a slave to Satan. Of course, he died a sinful man, and he will go to hellfire, where the children of Satan shall dwell forever. We are going to look at the second story that portrays the act of greed. In this second story, we have an army commander from Syria that humbled himself in order to receive healing as a result of leprosy on him, and also a greedy servant of the prophet of God. This story is about Naaman, a Syrian army commander who was highly respected by Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, but suffered from leprosy. Leprosy is a very deadly disease that involves excommunication of the patient. With the high position of Naaman, he suffered this illness. As a result of that, he needed help. A little slave girl from the land of Israel in Naaman's house told his wife about Prophet Elisha in Israel, who could cure Naaman. Naaman informed the king of Syria, who wrote and gave him a letter to the king of Israel concerning his ordeal. He went to the king in Israel, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 festal garments. The king of Israel read the letter and rent his clothes. He said, "Am I God to kill and make alive, that this man sends me to cure a man of his leprosy?" Okay. The king of Israel assumed that the king of Syria was only looking for a way to attack him, and he became worried. When Elisha the prophet heard that the king of Israel had rent his clothes, he intervened. Prophet Elisha requested that the king should send Naaman to him in order to convince him that there is a prophet in Israel. Naaman was sent to Prophet Elisha by the king of Israel. Naaman moved to the house of Elisha the prophet. When he arrived at the prophet's house, Prophet Elisha sent his messenger to tell him to go and wash 7 times in the river Jordan and be cured of his disease. Naaman became angry and asked if Abana and Pharpar, the rivers in Damascus, are not better than the waters in Israel. Could I not wash in them and be clean? He went away angrily, but his servants approached him and asked him to do as the prophet had commanded. Looking at Naaman's reaction, you don't blame him, because he was a high-placed army officer in the land of Syria. He expected that the prophet should at least receive him and lay hands on him. After listening to the servants with him, Naaman had a second thought and went to the river Jordan as he was asked to do, and washed himself 7 times. Immediately, he was healed and his skin restored to normalcy. When Naaman became healed of his leprosy, he returned to Prophet Elisha with some gifts to show gratitude. But the prophet rejected his gifts. The prophet rejected these gifts, not that he was not happy with Naaman, but it was in accordance of what God expects of him. He received the gifts of healing and prophecy freely, and as such should give it out freely. Naaman acknowledged the God of the Israelites as the only true God and promised to offer sacrifice to the God of Israel, even in Syria. Prophet Elisha wished him well to go in peace. You are welcome to Federal Government College Port Harcourt e-learning in Christian Religious Studies. Our topic for today is on greed and its effects by Mrs. Ikedeaso. We are going to move on to lessons to be derived from Naaman's healing and Gehazi's action. The first lesson is greed attracts serious consequences on the individual, as the case of Gehazi, who brought a curse of leprosy upon himself. Secondly, nothing is hidden from God. The prophet got a revelation of Gehazi's action even when Gehazi lied to him. So we should do well by doing those things which are pleasant before the sight of God, for nothing is hidden from him. Thirdly, we have to learn that there is need for us to display humility in order to achieve success in life. If you look at the life of Naaman, the Syrian army commander, who was asked to go to the river Jordan for him to be clean. At this point, he had to humble himself, dropping his high position in order to get his healing. So we need this virtue of humility in our life as individuals in order to achieve success. Fourthly, the sin of Gehazi affected his descendants. Oh, you can see, sometimes the sin of an individual can extend to even his descendants. Therefore, we have to be careful in our actions. Fifthly, obedience to God's word brings good results. Naaman obeyed God's instruction through the prophet Elisha, and he was healed. It is necessary that we listen when God speaks to us, especially through his prophets. Also, this episode revealed God's blessings and healing unto his people free of charge. We can see the prophet Elisha healed Naaman without collecting a dime from him. It means that God expects his servants to deliver his people freely without collecting money or making any demand of material things. Also, God answers the prayers of all, irrespective of our tribe, race, or nation. Yes, God is God of all mankind. And therefore, we need to put our total trust in him. Whether you are from Europe or Nigeria, as far as you place your trust in God, he will answer your prayer. Finally, faith is a very important factor in healing. Every Christian should have a strong faith whenever we are making our request from God. If you need the miracle of healing, you need to work on your faith in order to achieve this. Summary. In order to summarize our lesson, we have the following points to make. 1. Greed is as a result of lack of contentment. 2. Christians should put their total trust in God, who is our great provider. 3. Christians must endeavor to be satisfied with what God has blessed them with. 4. Failure to do this leads one to greed. 5. Greed has a lot of consequences and effects which are detrimental to one's life and can also affect one's generation. In order to assess this lesson, we have the following questions. 1. Identify 2 important virtues that can be learned from the episodes. 2. State 3 effects of Gehazi's greed and conduct. Do these assignments and submit it via the email below. Present 15 points on the healing of Naaman the Syrian on or before 8th of June 2020. Thank you for joining me. Stay home and stay safe.